Okay, here we go.
Strap yourself in for Keeping It Real with Jack and Raoul.
Welcome back, keepers, to another episode of Keeping It Real with Jack and Raoul.
What's the name of this episode, Raoul?
Oh, my God. This
Go on,
one
say it.
is Shut the Fuck Up.
Me, you, or anyone?
Anyone. We're gonna be talking about how the consequences of talking too much, why we do it.
And we all do it.
We all do it.
We've all done it.
What causes it, when we tend to do it the most, and what we can do to perhaps stop talking.
I can't wait for you to go into a story because I know you've got one. You were just sharing one with me before. But before you do, one of the things that I will stop talking for and shut my mouth for a second
Is when there's wine in
when
it.
I have a glass of Wild Duck Creek Estate wine.
Oh, my God, what a segue.
I know. What a coincidence.
You caught up with Liam on the weekend, didn't you?
I did. The beautiful Liam Anderson, Wild Duck Creek Estate winemaker. And I was chatting away to him because they've been in business 30 years, right? He's only a young guy, and he's obviously inherited the business, from his father, and is being trained up by his father. And he was saying to me that they get such joy out of being inclusive. And I said, well, what does that mean? I mean, you want people buying your wine. He said, well, it is a premium brand. We work really hard to make it brilliant wine, and we know that it is. He said, so what we do is we actually value our members not based on how much they spend, and there's some people that spend a lot with them, but actually just by the fact that they're consistent, so that they buy wine on a regular basis. And I said, what's that about? And he said, because we came from nothing and we are really very humble, we know what it feels like to be left out. And we never, ever wanted that to be part of our, culture at Wild Duck Creek Estate. Isn't that lovely?
That's nice too.
So very inclusive is this brand.
Yeah. And I think you said something else too, that it's consistent.
Yeah.
So seriously, and they are our sponsors and partners for a reason, because it's very good wine. And you get it, and you know what you know
what you're going to get.
Because I know we did last week's episode was on things that annoy us.
Yes.
So, but another thing that annoys you is when you do buy a bottle of wine and it's not good.
Actually, that's a really good point. And I think I forgot to raise this in our episode last week, not getting good value. I hate that.
Yeah.
Happy to spend money on an experience or a product or a service, but there is an expectation. With Wild Duck Creek Estate, your expectations are usually exceeded.
Yeah. So when I was in Arizona last week, a few weeks ago now, if I'm not with the client going out for dinner or whatever, I just sort of tend to stay in my room and
ordering pizza.
Yeah, order pizza or $2 pizza. But I go shopping at food and kitchen shops. That's where I could spend ages in kitchen food supply shops.
This is why I love you.
Anyway, there was this little, a really boutique deli thing, and they had some really nice food. Now I bought some really nice cheese.
Yum.
And they had some imported wine. So I thought, instead of paying ridiculous amounts of wine for my room service, I got this wine, and it was a Riesling. And I said to them, now I hate sweet Rieslings.
So do I.
Is it dry? And they went, it is a little bit sweet, but it's not the sickly
not
sweet.
very sweet.
It's very dry, but just with a little bit of. Anyway, I got it.
Shocking.
It was bloody sweet
Sugar.
as. Oh my God. Anyway, the cheese was nice.
Back to the episode. Speaking of, things that annoy us, people that waffle. Anyway, Raoul.
Speaking of shut the fuck up, this episode came about because when I was in Arizona again.
Comes up every day in my life. Yep.
I was out for lunch. I spent a lot of time eating when I'm away.
You too. Oh, missed lunch a lot.
Yes, I was at lunch and I was by myself. So, I'm sitting in there by lunch doing a little bit of work on my laptop. But because you're by yourself, you're not listening and talking to anyone. So you sort of
You don't listen even when you're not with yourself.
Shut the fuck up. So I was watching, there was a table in front of me and it was like a business meeting. You could tell it was a business meeting. There was 4 people around this table and the one guy was literally speaking for 95%
verbal
of
diarrhea.
the time. And just speaking. And I'm looking at the other people and it was clear to me that they were not interested. They kept looking around and I was thinking to myself, is he not seeing that? Like, is he not seeing that people are not interested?
Clearly wasn't.
Is he not hearing the fact that he's doing the vast majority of the talking? And so it did.
Amazing.
I was sitting there observing why that happened. So then I suggested to you, we should do an episode on that, because you go, I know why that happened. So
it's a good one.
please
Okay,
tell us why
first
that
of all,
happens.
your mate that you were, not your mate, but the person that you were observing who had verbal diarrhea, who was speaking constantly, who wasn't shutting the fuck up, there's a new name for him.
Oh.
Conversation narcissist.
Oh, I like
What's
that.
So CN, we'll call him CN. So why was he talking constantly?
My mind went somewhere else.
Yes,
when
I'm
you
sure
said
it did.
CN.
Let's not go there. Definitely shut the fuck up. Okay, so some of the causes of people that talk a lot and don't shut up: lack of self-control. They can't self-regulate, so they just keep talking and talking. They might have an ego that they need stroking. So while I'm talking, I'm holding control. People are watching me. You know, they're listening to me. I'm getting attention.
Is that when we say they just like the sound of their own voice?
Voice, absolutely. So if you are someone who talks a lot, and maybe you aren't, but if you are, maybe you're not aware of it, these are reasons why, or you know people that do this. Here's some of the reasons. And there's a lot of reasons why you could talk a lot. Some people think it makes them more likable. It's actually the opposite.
Is that when sometimes people think, they're the life of the party type
Conversation narcissist, yeah?
Yeah.
Aren't I funny?
Yeah, aren't I
Aren't
funny?
I interesting?
Yeah.
Well, you might be funny and you might be interesting, but keep them wanting more is a favourite line in acting circles when you're on a stage is don't hijack it so much that people are like, I wish you would just shut the fuck up.
And that's also too, and it comes back, and we've mentioned this several times in previous episodes, better to be interesting than interested. I mean, you might, did I
you
say
should
that
be-
around the
no,
wrong
no.
way? I said that around the wrong
Yeah,
way.
you should be
better to
interested.
be interested than interesting.
You
So
are interesting by being interested in others.
Yeah, and you might genuinely be interesting, but you still should be interested.
Absolutely
in others.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. So you like to be right. You have an opinion and you're determined to get that opinion out. And so you're somebody who talks a lot to exercise your opinion. That could be another reason why
Trying to convince others of
absolutely
you being right.
Absolutely. People that think out loud. Now, I have absolutely been accused of this. So I'll say to Richard, what do you think about X? And he'll pause. And I'll go, I'm asking you a question. Hello, what do you think? And he says, I'm thinking.
Yes.
Whereas I will be talking. He'll say, what do you think about X? And I'll go, well, actually, I'm talking while I'm thinking. It's actually not a good thing.
You and I are very much the same, and Steve and Richard are very much the same. So you and I are massive extroverts, and the extrovert is one of the common things that extroverts do is they think out loud.
Correct.
And Steve and Richard are introverts, where they like to process things. So I do exactly the same thing. I'll ask Steve a question, like, what do you think we should do? Even could be, what do you think we should have for dinner, right? And he doesn't answer.
No, well, he's thinking.
I know. But I go, did you hear me? Or you're thinking?
Are you active listening, Steve?
Is it the same? And he goes, well, I'm thinking.
Yeah. It's a good one to remember, right?
I know. I have to be.
Actually pause.
Yes.
I coach on this. I coach on this a lot, and I'm jumping to tips and techniques, but we'll get to those in a moment because there's still more reasons why people do talk a lot at the same time or at once. And being able to pause actually gives you a bit of power. So I was coaching somebody who had a disrespectful subordinate. Yep, this person would just talk over the top of them, wouldn't do as they were asked, and the leader had tried a number of things. And I said, you need to take back control. And one way to do that is to actually have a conversation. And when they say, so what do you think about this? What should I be doing about this? You say, one moment, I'm going to think about that. I said, then look away and pause and be comfortable with silence. They won't be. They'll jump in. And you can go back and say, I'm still thinking about that. Take back control, but actually create silence, create tension. So pause, shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Pause is when I do presentation training, I spend a bit of time on how to facilitate questions and using questions.
Yeah.
And the thing I say is you've got to then pause. You have to embrace the pause. And I think when people
Power of
talk
the
a
pause.
lot, they might ask a question, and if someone doesn't respond in a nanosecond because they're actually thinking about what you've said, they get uncomfortable with the pause, so they just keep talking again. And it was like, you've asked someone a question, you've give them the time to respond. And so I think embracing the pause, being comfortable with the pause. A lot of people are so uncomfortable with pausing.
Get more comfortable. Have that is a good tension. And you're right. It actually takes us a few seconds to comprehend and process information. So how can we possibly answer very quickly without thinking? Well, we can and we do and we shouldn't, I guess is the point.
Technique I suggest to people about the pause is ask a question, like, and it could be in a team meeting or whatever, or just what do you think, and then actually stop and have a drink, whether it's a drink of water or a sip of
Take a glass
coffee,
of water into a meeting with you.
Because it just makes that 1 second silence that might feel uncomfortable to some like 3 or 4 or 5 seconds, and it's actually enough time for then people to contribute.
Correct.
Especially if you're talking to an introvert.
That's true, and you're an extrovert. That's a very good point. So what else causes people to keep talking? Nerves, obviously. When you're nervous, you gabble. Yeah. So we'll talk about
talk fast. Like
talk fast. When I first started in radio, I used to put a Post-it note up, slow down. I spoke so quickly, and it was because I was nervous. I was excited. It was an adrenaline thing, but it was dreadful because, radio is an audio medium.
Yep.
So if you're gabbling and talking really quickly, then people aren't going to be able to hear you.
You see that again when people present public speaking. A lot of people get nervous for public speaking, and they start speaking. They talk really, really quickly, and it was like, and it just, when people do that, it's so obvious they're nervous.
So obvious.
Slow down.
So you're somebody who might be awkward with silence. We spoke about that. Yeah. What about neurodiversity? I mean, people with ADHD, I think that I'm quite sure that could also mean that you talk a lot.
Yeah, we're becoming a lot more aware of neurodiversity, ADHD. There's some other aspects I think that make people not aware or can't see can't read the cues.
Yes.
So they keep talking. So there's a lot of reasons. There's absolutely a lot of reasons why in certain situations we talk too much, and we'll all do it.
So let's think about some of the maybe situations or the occasions where this becomes a thing. So I would coach, I reckon, daily on this. Interviews.
Job interviews. It is that is, you're I reckon nervous. I was about to say.
You try to impress.
Yep.
So you're talking. Talk.
You have, and the classic interview technique is using, behavioural event interviewing or the STAR method, but you're literally being asked, tell me a time when, and you're nervous and you've got this and you just keep talking.
And you think you need to answer really quickly.
Yes.
When in actual fact, as an interviewer, which I have interviewed many, many people over the years of being a leader in organisations, I love it when someone says, that's a great question. Let me think about that for a moment. Yeah. Or they actually just pause before they answer me.
I know.
I think, there's somebody showing some thought.
Yeah, and I think we spoke about this in our job interview podcast. By the way, that is the best, I was going to say best selling because like we don't sell. On YouTube, it's got the most views ever, it's a YouTube on job interviews.
Skill and a knack to prepare for and practice being a great interviewee. Yeah. So it's worth looking at. If you are going for a job, maybe you've already listened to it. When I'm coaching, I say to people, go back and listen to the job interview episode. Okay, so situations.
But one of the things in that is we've said when you're asked a question, just give some of the information. And if they want to find out more, they will ask.
They will ask.
Or you could even say, do you want me to go deeper into that? But don't
leave them wanting more.
Exactly.
There you are. Okay, so situations. So you might talk a lot in an interview. What about on a first date?
First date, I
haven't had one of those for a very long time.
I was going to say it's been a bloody long time since I've had a first date.
I mean, you can tell when you've been married 28 years, you barely talk. And you're very comfortable not talking.
Sometimes when you go out to dinner and you see couples that aren't talking.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God.
I watched this older couple in the country town I live in. We were out for dinner and they both walked in and they both picked up their phones and they never spoke to each other for the entire dinner. Their meals arrived and they just continued to look at their phones. They looked perfectly happy, but they had no need to speak. I mean, that's taking it to a whole new level, I think.
But anyway. I mean, the first dates would be like job interviews where you're a little bit nervous.
Yes,
too. So
yes,
it's
true.
like-
That could be a first date. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Introductions. When you introduce someone to somebody, particularly if you're a bit excited about, Ral, I've been wanting you to meet my friend John for a long, long time. So when I introduce you, I'm a bit excited by that. So I just keep talking and talking and talking. And you don't get to even know,
And
John.
I was like, all right.
I get
sometimes and that's true. Even sometimes when I'm the speaker
Yeah.
and someone's starting to introduce me, it's like, oh my God, in my head I'm going, shut the fuck up. I'm bored. I'm
Yeah,
bored
that's
already and you're
right.
talking about me.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
That's a good point.
And the other thing with introductions, and again, we spoke about this last week on the things that annoy us, was when people are going around introducing themselves. And I was like, oh my God.
Just get on with it.
Just,
you're
I
not
do
that interesting.
No. It's like just, someone else took 2 minutes and you're taking 20 minutes.
Yeah,
What-
wrong,
Do you
wrong.
seriously think you're 10 times more interesting than them?
No, and time is ticking on. We're here for a reason.
Yeah.
The introduction is an icebreaker in many ways, and just to get to know each other very briefly.
And it's going back to the causes, Jack, you said before, and I see people do this and I'm thinking, why are they doing it? Are they not aware that they've just spoken for 20
They're
minutes?
not. They lack
They're literally not aware,
self-awareness.
or they're not, picking up the cues when
Body language.
someone will be going, anyway, okay, well, next person.
Or they start moving,
next person,
rustling
and they
paper.
still
keep talking.
I did that recently at a dinner, and we were all being picked up at a certain time.
Yeah.
And I was trying to push
Move
it
things along.
And at one point I said, okay, so there's 3 people left and we've only got 10 minutes. So you're going to have to be really short. And the next person said, yeah, I'm going to be super short, and spoke for 15 minutes. And she said, I'm going to be short.
Yeah. I was facilitating a workshop just recently for a corporate, and one of the staff said, "I'm going to tell a long story very quickly." And after 10 minutes, I said, "That long story that you were going to tell very quickly," and of course the whole room erupted in laughter. And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Where was I?" I said, "Done. That's where you are. We're finished." Okay. What about other situations when you might talk too much?
So when you're presenting,
Yeah.
So again,
Watch that.
you're the person presenting. So I guess it's understandable that you're doing the most of the talking. But again, embrace questions. And to me, one of the things I talk about, a really good mindset to go in when you're presenting is treat it as a conversation, not a presentation.
Correct. Interaction.
Even though you're, so interacting and using questions around that, and, actively making it feel like a conversation, not a presentation.
And invite others to be included and to share the information.
Yeah.
Some of the best workshops I do are group workshops where, or coaching, online coaching is in a group scenario where the others are actually contributing because they're also coaching each other.
Yeah.
And it does make it interesting. So I think that's a really good one. So they say the best conversationalist is someone who listens.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm listening to that.
Notice that.
On the presenting one too, if you've got to speak for an hour, don't prepare or don't think I've got an hour's worth of content.
Yeah.
Because
then you're just talking at people.
Then you're talking at people.
Nothing worse. What's another example where you might talk too much, Ral?
When you're drinking.
When you're pissed. It's true, eh?
We've all been there.
And look, first dates or, if you're excited at a dinner, got to watch that, right?
And you're talking.
I used to say to myself, it's sip the wine, guzzle the water, not the other way round.
See, that's where I've been going wrong. All this
That's why I
time,
love-
we've all been there before.
We have. Okay,
It's
so those are the
just
situations.
talking way too much.
Where you should shut the fuck up.
Meetings.
Oh,
And not only
client
a couple of
meetings.
things. I'm going to talk about client meetings,
Okay.
and if you are going to a client, if you're speaking to a potential client, the biggest mistake I see people make in that, let's call it the sales process, is they talk too much. And they're trying to sell them everything they can do, and they're really passionate about it, so they're talking. If you're talking to a potential client, they should be doing the vast majority of the talking.
And if you can ask some good questions as part of your talking, you'll actually learn something that you can then use to help the sales process. The same with job interviews. I always coach my clients and say, where possible, and usually the process is the people interviewing you, will ask you all the questions. If possible, try and get a question in early yourself.
Yeah.
And that can help steer and guide your answers. So lots of different situations as to why people talk a lot and talk too much. And here's some ways, tips and techniques that we think can help you shut the fuck up.
Yes.
The first one is ask for feedback. Actually become very self-aware about if you do this and when you might do it.
Yeah.
Ask people, do I talk a lot? Do I not pause enough? Do I give you an opportunity to speak to me? And the more senior you are, the more you should ask those questions.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people are very respectful of seniority. So they're letting you yap on when in actual fact they're not impressed.
Yeah.
Or they're a bit embarrassed by it.
You know what I thought you could do? Because like meetings is another actually team meetings, all right? So if you're the team manager, the leader, you might think you have to do all the talking and you shouldn't be.
That's true.
I wonder if you could, instead of asking for feedback because like you might not get it from your team.
True.
I wonder if you could record it.
Yes.
When you record it and then just play it back and almost do an audit of like how
Very
much of the
great
60 minutes did I talk?
Very great tip. So one of the things I was taught very early in radio is you have to do an air check with your boss. I've mentioned this before, where after you've done an on-air shift, there is an automated recording of just when you speak, so that you can sit down with your boss and they critique you. And they're not critiquing you to tell you you're doing a great job. They're telling you all the things you're doing wrong. So you learn very, very early about self-awareness, and you learn very early to have a thick skin. Like, okay, the feedback is going to be critiquing me so I get better. So recording yourself is an absolute genius tip. It really is. We've got phones that record.
Yeah, you just record.
Nothing's stopping you from doing that.
Sometimes when you record yourself too, you identify your filler words.
Yeah.
And I know this isn't about this topic, but you do organize. You notice that you've got filler words. Everyone has filler words.
They do.
I did that once for our ex-Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. Not because he asked me, but
I bet he didn't.
I was listening
Scotty
to
from marketing.
Question Time, and his filler word, a lot of their filler words is Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Like, Mr. Speaker. I was watching this thing. He did it so many times. I actually decided to count
How many times
times he did it,
Mr. Speaker.
and then I actually counted how many times, like the time he spoke.
Well,
It was every 4 seconds he said, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, okay. So this wasn't asking permission to speak.
No, this was
once he was speaking, he would then keep
when
saying
the question
Mr.
time.
Speaker,
And they go,
Mr.
"Wow,
Speaker."
thank you, Mr. Speaker." And as you know, Liberal have committed to this, Mr. Speaker, and as our people across the desk, Mr. Speaker,
Oh, it's so
Mr. Speaker.
inauthentic.
And I was like, "Oh my God!" He said it on average every 4 seconds.
Other words, basically, essentially, those
Yeah.
are filler words.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah. We all have filler words. Everyone has filler words like and one of the things we talked about pause.
Yeah.
My advice is you try to replace your filler word
With a
pause. And you just
So you've got to be very self-aware, very self-conscious as you're speaking. I'm about to go or basically, so stop.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. What are other tips and techniques to say less? Maybe
pay attention to cues.
yes.
So that my mate, you called him in Arizona, for
The
lunch,
conversation narcissist.
he just clearly
Missed any cues.
Missed all the cues because they were there.
What were the cues?
I could see them from across the room.
Eyes glazing over.
Just eyes like looking
away.
just looking around
Checking
the room.
phones.
Checking phones.
We are so bored with you.
Not engaging, not smiling.
and he missed all of that.
And I could see them. I could see them from across the
Amazing,
room.
wow.
He is 3 feet in front of them. And
Amazing.
couldn't see them.
So look for cues. Okay. So again, be very conscious while you're speaking. Are people engaged?
Yep.
Keep an eye on that. Embrace the pause. I love that. Actually, be okay to stop.
Yeah.
In fact, tell yourself, I'm going to say a couple of things and then I'm going to pause and I'm going to wait for a response, or I'm going to encourage a response. Maybe ask a question. What do you think of that?
I even, when it comes to cues too, like when I do virtual training.
Yes.
So when you're doing virtual stuff, have people on gallery and see them, and you can see if you're losing them, because a lot of people go, it's harder to read the room. Yes, it is.
Sure.
So pay more attention. But what I also encourage people, if you want to say something, just take yourself off mute.
Yes.
And so as soon as someone takes themselves off mute, I can see it and go, "Hey, Jack, did you want to say something?"
Always.
And bringing them in. Jack could always
That's
want to say
a good
something.
one. But again, if you are presenting something, and you said this earlier, don't be a monologue. Actually make it clear right from the get-go, I'm going to invite questions. I'm going to call you out for a conversation about this. So be ready.
Yeah.
So people do actively listen and are engaged, but then hold yourself accountable to that. Don't then go into a dialogue.
Yeah. And it's also too with it's asking questions. I think it's not saying, is there any questions?
Yeah.
And people go, is there any questions? No, great, move on. And they it's saying, so tell me what was the most interesting about that, or
is there an example anyone has on that particular topic?
Is this raising any concerns for someone? Have you experienced this before?
Like it. Who agrees with me?
Yes, and I even sometimes, again, this is virtual as well. You might see someone nodding or laughing, and you can go, "Hey, Jack, I see you nodding away to that. Tell me why that resonates with you so much." So it's asking good questions that really actively invite others to contribute, not just doing, has anyone got any questions?
I like that. You spoke before about a glass of water. A great tip for managing nerves is actually having a glass of water, whether you're in an interview, whether you're doing a keynote or a presentation, have a glass of water. If you see the water, it's likely you'll pick it up and take a sip. So you're pausing.
Yeah.
So that's actually a nice connection to pause.
What about if people are really shaking? Most people aren't doing that. You know what they think? They feel like they're shaking, but they're not.
And look, I have coached on this before. If you're nervous, say. People understand. We've all been nervous. We will all continue to be nervous. In an interview scenario, try and help people relax, so you can say, look, I'm a little bit nervous. That's fine. No problem. Yeah. Okay, you've called it now. Yeah. Move on.
And manage it. We've spoken before about manage nerves, breathing, just be aware, slow down.
Have a laugh.
Acknowledge it, like you just said. Yeah.
What about setting yourself a time limit, even if you do that mentally, Raul?
What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is I'm about to present something, or I'm about to have a conversation with you, and I know I tend to waffle. I've been given that feedback, or I'm self-aware of that. So what I'm going to do is, in my mind, I'm going to say, I'm going to talk for 30 seconds and then I'm going to stop.
Nice. Just in your head, clearly not setting an alarm.
Well, you could set an alarm. Ring, ring, ring.
Maybe when next time I'm at a thing where people are going to do their intros, I'm going to set an alarm.
That's not a bad idea.
Everyone's got 3 minutes.
That's not a bad idea.
You can ask for one more minute.
3 minutes is a long time to introduce yourself.
1 minute.
So be prepared about an introduction. That would be another thing. Okay, what else?
When you were talking, people just waffle or go on, you reminded me of what I coach about this in my storytelling training is don't do unnecessary editing. And
what do you mean by that?
So there's a few things. Sometimes people are sharing a story and they'll go, and it normally happens at the start of the story where they'll go, oh, so 5 years ago, I go, no, it wasn't 5, it was 6. It was 6.
Oh, I
was it?
hate
and
that.
I was like, no one cares.
I hate that. Was it Tuesday?
Was it
Thursday? John, what day was it?
It doesn't matter.
Just get to the point. Is that a nervous thing, do you think? Or is it an attention thing?
No, I just think people just tend to do it. And again, we've all done it before, but people do it unnecessarily, or they start a story.
People do it a lot.
And they're not prepared. You know what I think is they're not prepared. Yeah, so I see this in storytelling where they'll start to tell a story and this unnecessary editing happens, or they'll go down a rabbit hole, go off on a tangent and then go, anyway, back to the story. Is that the most frustrating thing? Anyway, back to the story. It was
and by then I've forgotten what the story is. I've lost interest. I'm like one of your mates, with your mate, the conversational narcissist. I've already tuned out. Yep. Okay, so tips and techniques. What do we say? Stay on topic.
Yep.
Forget was it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 a.m., 9 a.m. No one gives a fuck.
No one cares.
Ask for feedback. If you think you are somebody who waffles, maybe you don't think you waffle. Don't assume you don't.
Yeah.
Go and ask for feedback. How am I when I speak? Do I ask enough questions?
And if
Give me some feedback.
You should get a good coach.
You should
Jack.
definitely get a good coach, or do a great storytelling or communication workshop. Pay attention.
Do you ever in your coaching session say, shut the fuck up? You probably, no, you wouldn't.
I haven't.
You wouldn't say it that way.
But
you would give good feedback.
And it happened this morning was I asked the question and we went off on a tangent. When I say we, the person I was speaking to went off on a tangent. And I said, so back to your strategy. So then she got back on to the point that we were discussing, and then she went off on a tangent. I said, that strategy we were talking about. Oh, sorry, she said. So I just kept bringing it back, but I interrupted her to do it, which I hate to do because I am trying to listen. but she was going off on tangents.
Yeah.
So she needs to be brought back.
got to be done.
Whether she remembers that in the future will be interesting. Okay, what are some tips and techniques?
So
Wrap 'em
we've
up.
done that. Pay attention to cues, the non-verbal
Yeah.
as well. So but be on the lookout for it. Be
If
on
people
the
are
lookout.
snoring and asleep, there's a good chance
Exactly.
they've lost interest.
You've got like the whiplash. They've lost interest.
and their eyes are glazing over.
Embrace the pause.
Love the pause.
Love the pause.
Maybe have a glass of water or have some sort of prop that will help you pause. I think that's a good thing.
Yep.
Time limit. Set that
Yeah,
time
that was a
limit
good one. That
in
was
your
a good
mind.
one.
I like that. Hey, the other one is have empathy, quite frankly, for others. If you are talking to people, have empathy for them to be included in the conversation or for them to actually hear you stop talking.
Yeah,
It's not about you.
absolutely.
All right.
All right.
There's some good tips.
Well, as usual, there's some good tips and techniques. Now, a couple of things you can do to support us is 5-star reviews on Spotify or Apple, anywhere you're listening, and share it as well. And again, going back to our lovely partners, Wild Duck Creek Estate, I was last week, Jack, someone was saying how much they loved an episode and that something you had said to them. And they literally said, I felt like Jack was talking to me. I was getting a coaching, a free coaching session.
This is a free coaching session.
It is a free coaching.
both of
So
us.
I said to her, and I go,
Right.
So what is that free coaching session worth for you? Is it worth a bottle of wine? Maybe 3 bottles of wine? Maybe a case of wine? She went, easily. And I
Love
went,
it.
Well, here's a thought. Buy a case
Love
of
where you're
wine
going with
or a
this.
bottle of wine from Wild Duck Creek Estate.
And support us.
You are paying money, but you are getting the wine.
The wine and beautiful
you are
wine.
therefore supporting Wild Duck Creek Estate,
great
who are supporting
family-owned
us.
business.
So
win-win.
Win.
Love
I
it.
say.
What a great tip and technique to wrap up
I
with.
know.
So
Anyway.
buy some wine, people, please. It'll mean that we can keep giving you free coaching sessions.
Absolutely.
You can keep listening and then you can write in and tell us to shut the fuck up.
All right. On that note, keepers, we'll speak to you next time.
Bye.
You've been listening to another episode of Keeping It Real with Jack and Rahl. If you like what you've heard, don't forget to tell others about it and give a 5-star review. They may seem confident, but they really are sensitive 5-star needy souls. Yeah, right. Keeping It Real, created by Jack Phillips and Gabriel Dolan. Produced by Keelan Ferrari Brown. And this really real voiceover, spoken by Richard Phillips.